Welcome to Craft Chat Chronicles, the go-to podcast for tips on crafting best-selling fiction. Here at Craft Chat Chronicles, we bring you expert interviews, insights, and tips on writing, publishing, and marketing. For workshops, show notes, and more information, visit jdmyall.com.
On episode 5 of Craft Chat Chronicles, we have debut author Jill 2. Jill is host of the Afronauts podcast that talks about all things writing and publishing from a Black perspective. And she is the debut author of the novel The Dividing Sky. Again, Jill 2 is the host of the Afronauts podcast and the debut author of the novel The Dividing Sky. Her novel, The Dividing Sky, is available wherever books are sold. Welcome, Jill.
So tell me about your publishing journey.
Yeah, let's see. So I started writing, with a view towards like finishing a novel at some point. I guess about 10 years ago now. Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 10 years ago now. I loved writing when I was in school and I was a kid, and my parents were like, great, but that's not gonna pay the bills. Like, you're good at other things that will make money, so go ahead and do those things instead. So I went to school and did a lot of like very like corporate, high demand, like startup-y type jobs. But I always felt like there was something calling me back to storytelling. And so I remember like walking out of, I loved like sci-fi and like those kinds of stories when I was a kid, and kind of just grew away from it and didn't have time and was, focused on my career. And some coworkers decided to go see Divergent when it came out. And I was like, great, like, sure, like, I'll go. I haven't read the books yet, but like, sounds good. And I went, and like walking out of that theater, I was like, this is how I want to feel like for the rest of my, I've been missing this feeling for so long. Like, I want to feel this way again. And that night I went home and I started working on the book that eventually got me my agent like 7 or 8 years later. So I got my agent, and then about a year later started working on the story that ended up being my debut. And here we are. So yeah, it's been kind of a crazy journey, lots of weird turns. I queried for, a couple of years that book. They got me my agent, got a lot of like pull requests, but it wasn't quite hitting on the like promise of the premise. And I ended up being very lucky to get to win a contest to have that manuscript edited by Diana Foe, who's I think Hugo Award winning now editor, who was at Tor for a while and now is at Air One. And I worked with her for a year, I think, on that manuscript, and ended up getting an agent. But yeah, it was a lot of me knowing what I wanted my story and my writing to be and not quite knowing how to get there, and finding people who were lucky, or I was lucky enough to take the time to tell me everything that was wrong with what I was doing. So, yeah. Now,
the contest, was that a Twitter contest or some other contest?
It was announced on Twitter. I found it on Twitter. And basically it wasn't like a pitch contest, so you had to submit your entire manuscript. So I was lucky. That was, I think it was announced in the summer of 2020. I was lucky that I, had the manuscript ready to go. So by then I probably had like the last act of my book ready, like almost finished, when my youngest was born. So she was born in October 2019. And I was like, you know what? I have quit this story so many times. Like, I'm not quitting again. I'm going to finish it. And so she was born, and I was like, I'm writing every day. I don't care. Like, I know, like, 4th trimester, like, horrible, like, so tired, so exhausted. But I would commit to writing a page every day. So 250 words every day, like on my phone, under my blanket, while she was like self-soothing or like I was feeding her. And I typed like the end in like May, I want to say, of 2020. And it was trash. It was garbage. It was so bad. I was so tired. I was like, who wrote the last few chapters of this book? It's like barely legible. But it was finished. And so I was able to at least have something to submit when it came time to submit to that contest. And I scrambled to kind of finish revising and like just cleaning up like literally just the prose and like just the gobbledygook of that last act in time for the submission deadline. and I made it, but I knew, still that it wasn't quite where I wanted it to be as far as like the quality of that story. So I kept revising, as time went on. And some friends of mine had also submitted to that contest, and they, around like September, they got notifications of like, oh, you were the third prize, second place winner. Here's your kind of like second prize is like a query critique or something like that. I was like, oh, I guess I didn't get it. I haven't heard anything, so it's not on the list at all. And then I got an email from Diana in October. It was like, you won. And I was like, I won? Like won? And that was incredible. And like, it's what I wanted, right? I had gotten an offer from a very, very, very junior agent for that manuscript about a month prior to that, who was just like, story's ready to go. Like, let's like fix some typos. We're ready to submit it. And I was like, no, we're not. Like, I can tell you right now that story is not where I want it to be. And that difference in vision and that difference in like standards, honestly, was enough for me to say like, thanks, but no thanks. I don't want to work with you. Because I was looking for someone like Diana who was going to take my manuscript and tear it apart and say like, here's what it could be, and like give me permission, I think, in some ways to really push myself and to take it to a different place.
I love that. Tell me a little bit about your novel, The Divided Sky.
Yeah, so this story, it's funny. My first book died on submission. I think I might revisit it. I've been kind of thinking about it a lot lately. But my first book took me 7 or 8 years to write. The Dividing Sky took me 90 days. This book is kind of like poured out of me. And essentially it is, people call it like a cozy dystopian, which sounds impossible, but it is kind of like a cozy, heartwarming dystopian romance about a girl who uses her neurochip to illegally deal happy memories, and the handsome rookie who's determined to arrest her. And it's set in this world that I kind of refer to as Jeff Bezos's fever dream. So, the founder of Amazon, because it's very like hyper capitalist. It's a world in the kind of the near future, 24th century, where everybody works super aggressive hours for this company that really controls everything. And you have like the wealthy kind of like white collar, like upper management workers who are just so busy working that they don't have time to live life for themselves. And so what this company has done to keep them happy and productive is to have the lower class people in this society become proxies. And so proxies live different aspects of the upper class people's lives for them. They raise their kids, they'll deliver their groceries and, run errands for them. But they'll also go on dates on their behalf, and they will look at the sunrise for them. They'll read books for them. They'll see movies for them. And all these things they upload via neurochip to their upper clients' brains, so that they will kind of feel like they have those experiences themselves. And, I wrote this at a time when I was doing those kind of very high, I thought of this idea when I was kind of in those really high stress, high demand jobs where I was outsourcing a lot of my life, right? I was outsourcing dog care and laundry and food delivery, all the stuff that we think about. And I was never filling the time that I gained back from that outsourcing with fulfilling things for myself. I was dealing with more work all the time. And so I was like, well, let's think about a future where technology catches up to that idea. You could outsource pretty much anything. At what point would somebody say, like, actually, I'm done with like striving for efficiency. Like, I want to live like a fulfilled, like truly joyful life. That kind of like was where the idea for the story was born.
I love that. I also like that you're a sci-fi fantasy nerd, because I am too.
Yeah, there's not a lot of us. It's weird. My middle grade coming out in April is not sci-fi or fantasy. It's contemporary, but it is about a girl who loves her local Renaissance festival. And I feel like growing up like Black and like being into that kind of stuff, it was not common to see us like represented in those kinds of spaces. So it's amazing, to make it to this point where we find our community, we find each other, and like realize we've been here the whole time, maybe a little bit more isolated than we realized. So
now, was it your plan to write across genres, or is that something that kind of publishing?
It really wasn't. It's so funny because my middle grade, Kaya Morgan's crowning achievement was actually originally a short story. There was an anthology called Karen Strong, who is an amazing author. She had an anthology come out last January called Cool, Awkward, Black. And it was just about like looking for stories. There were a lot of like published, established authors that were part of that, but they also had an open call for unagented, kind of fresh voices. Just stories of like awkward Blackness of all kinds, whether, across genres. And I came up with this Renaissance Festival story as a YA story originally. Just really like thinking about back to like my days of growing up. My dad was a huge like Renaissance Festival nerd. And how strange it felt to be like into those things, but also have your blackness questioned and like all these kinds of things kind of bubbling up and having to prove yourself in all directions. Kind of like the complicated nature of that. This is a YA short story, and did not make it into that anthology. And so I kind of just like put it on the back burner because like YA contemporary short stories, like there aren't a ton of markets for that. Like it's like, where do you put that after that? And so I just kind of like tabled it. I was like, I love the story, but like it's, it is what it is. And then in like November of last year, 2023, no, 2022, excuse me, my agent got an email from Disney Hyperion, which was starting a new imprint called Freedom Fire, led by Kwame Mbalia, who wrote the Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky series. And that was, they were looking for proposals. And, they were looking for middle grade primarily, maybe lower YA, looking for proposals of, stories of Black joy and resilience. And I was like, I might have something actually. So I took that YA short story and I aged it down. I was like, this actually feels like it might make more sense as middle grade. And so I aged it down and wrote, a couple of chapters and the synopsis, because I had the story in my head so clearly from the short story. I just kind of fleshed out the full story. And we submitted it in November, and I think by February we had the offer. And so so for me it was more just like a story that like came out of like my lived experience. I always thought that I would just be a straight like sci-fi author, like across age categories, but didn't ever think about writing in contemporary. It just kind of like happened, which is kind of funny. So now we're into the phase where we're talking about it like a book 2 in my Disney contract. And it's like, well, am I going to stay in contemporary? Am I trying to go back to my roots as a sci-fi author? I'm trying to figure out like what that looks like. So yeah, it's kind of a funny just series of events.
Tell me about your querying process with well in general and
So I finished that story, that adult is like an adult parallel universe story, which I love dearly. And I started querying it in like June 2020. It was sort of ready. I was like, it takes a while for it to get back to you. I'll just throw some things out there. Super high concept. So I got a lot of nibbles really fast. I'm just like, that sounds great. I want to, and I like PitMad was still a thing. I don't know if you remember PitMad. So like on like the Twitter pitch contests, it was really hitting because like the concept was super high, easy to communicate. And I would submit my fulls and just get rejected or just like crickets for a while. Because like I really like looking back on it now that the story did not deliver on the premise was fire. The manuscript did not quite deliver on that premise. And so I got to a place where I had a bunch of fulls out because people were kind of really interested in the story. And I got that offer from that junior agent. And this is like a cautionary tale for authors everywhere. Got that offer from that agent. Before I had even spoken to them, I emailed everyone that had a full out and I was like, I've got an offer. Like, yay. So like, you've got 2 weeks to respond. Amazing. And the more I sat on it, the more I was like, I don't think I'm going to take this offer. I actually think that I'm not vibing with like the plan for where we go from here. I just don't feel like it's the right move for me. And the rejections started coming in. So once you say like you got 2 weeks, everyone's like, oh, I don't have time, or like, oh, you've landed somewhere great. Good luck to you. Congratulations. So I ended up having no agent because I turned her down. I ended up having no more fulls out because everyone closed my submission. And I got no feedback because they were like, oh, you got an agent, so you're good. You don't need my notes. And so I ended up in this place where I was like, okay, like what am I gonna do? And so I was looking at like doing a full overhaul on my own, if I hadn't gotten into this contest with Diana. But luckily I did. So I started querying in 2020, June-ish, and then took everything off of submission to agents in October when we started working together. And then it took me about a year after that to do the revisions that Diana recommended for me. And then I got my manuscript was ready to go in October 2021. That's when I got my offer from Jenna Zantian, who's my agent now, who's fantastic. And so, yeah, it was just kind of one of those things where you kind of had to go slow to go fast, where like knowing that something isn't the right fit for you and like not being so like eager to jump the gun and say like, great, like agent in hand, perfect, let's do it. Because I think had I taken that offer, I wouldn't have been eligible for Diana's contest. I wouldn't have ended up with an agent who really could work with me over the long term of my career. Jen is very like strategically oriented and very editorial, which I love. And so all those things were a better fit for me. But if I'd gone for like the bird in the hand, then I might still be, having things languish on sub, honestly.
Hey, JD Mile here. Thanks for supporting the show. Today's episode was brought to you by my debut novel, Heart's Gambit, coming to bookstores in February of 2026. 2 time-traveling Black families, 1 cursed magical duel, and the pair of star-crossed lovers who just might break the cycle if they don't break each other first. If you like the love and time travel of Outlander mixed with the magic of the night circus, don't worry, Heart's Gambit is coming soon. In the meantime, please support today's guest by running out and buying their book. Thanks for supporting the show. Now, let's get chatty as Craft Chat Chronicles continues.
Now, how was that first call with the agent? How did that go? Did she email you first? Did she just call?
So actually, what's really okay. So this is really funny. So okay, so as part of the contest, there were a handful of agents that were like, "I want a first read of this manuscript when it's ready to go," and Jen was one of them. And we actually had like a prior relationship because you froze. Are you still there? Sorry, but you're still there. Because she's like never open to queries. Like she's like so busy and like her inbox is so full. But if you ever have something on her manuscript wish list, then she'll take you. And like months before my manuscript was done, actually when I was still in the early querying stages, she tweeted something that was like, I had the craziest dream that I could like talk to myself in like another universe. If you have a book like this, I really want to read it. And my friend like texted me like 11 o'clock and I was just like, Jill, she's got your book. Like she wants like a book just like yours. And so I tweeted her and I was like, I have exactly this. Like, can I submit it to you? And I did. And she didn't get it to me by the time I got the end of the contest. And so I was like, well, like, I'm going to revise it anyway. Like she's part of the group of agents that wants to see it. Like we'll just pause here. I want to send her my best work. And so for a year we paused and then, cut to the next year when the manuscript was ready to go. And I had also submitted to this additional agent outside of the contest, who I knew was really good and also really fast at like reading reviews. It's like I would love to work with him. Like I think he's really great. He's like getting like snatching up really good talent. I want to make sure I get in there before he's full. And so I submitted it to him. I got an offer and I was like ready to go and I was like so excited. But I wanted to give everyone else the 2 weeks. And so I reached out to Jen and I was like, I know that you're slammed. I know 2 weeks is like crazy. But we have like a history with this manuscript. So like if you feel it, like I would love for you to take some time if you can get to it to like read this manuscript. I feel like it's, we've kind of bonded on this over the past year. She's like, okay, I'll try. And then like the deadline gets like closer and closer. It's like, well, it's not going to happen. I'm like an early morning writer. So I got up early to write. I remember this, I was sitting in my kitchen, opened my laptop, and she's liked like 3 of my tweets. And I was like, that's interesting. And then I went to my inbox and then she was like, can we chat? And I was like, oh my gosh. And so that was really cool. And then talking with her, I was like, this is great. Like, I think it's hard to, at the time, even still, but at the time, this was like 2 years ago, there were not a lot of agents who were like excited about sci-fi. Sci-fi was a hard sell in any age category. Fantasy, still rules the day even today, but at the time, like there really was not a lot of sci-fi out there. And so it was really awesome to talk to an agent who like loved it as much as I did and like really believed in the stories. Was going to go to bat for them. So that was great.
Love that. When they like your stuff on social media, that's a good sign.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It means they're curious about you, which means they probably liked your work.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't want to like presume, but I feel like this is a good thing. The offer was in my inbox. So yeah, it was great.
So how was the submission process for you?
Yeah, so that book that I got, that Jen and I started working together on, at the time, it's so funny, like the trends and like, I haven't even been in the game that long, but like you see the trends kind of come and go. So at the time, adult sci-fi, I think it was either super literary or very like commercial, zippy, almost like military sci-fi. And my book was none of those things. And so, we got a lot of feedback that was like, Jill's a great writer. The story felt a little bit familiar or, just like didn't know where to place it. And so, we were on that one for, for a year before it was like, well, I think this isn't the right version of the story. Maybe at the time I was like, I could do a better version of the story. Like now I'm a stronger writer for it. So I like ignored it. Like while we were on sub, I wrote The Dividing Sky, and we went out on sub with that in when was that? I guess it would have been August of 2022. So yeah, we were on sub for like a full year with another story. And I was like, well, like I have this other book, let's just do this instead. And so we went on sub in 2022, and that was like August, and I had like doing some revisions to it, and then 6 weeks later we had an offer, which was amazing. And from my dream imprint, I was like, if there's anyone that I want to see the story, it's this one, which is Joy Revolution. And yeah, we had an offer, and I was like, great, like let's do it. So yeah, that was, sub takes as long as it takes, but I was like, I paid my dues. Like I'm ready for it to go well. So I got really lucky. And then, of course, being on submission for Kai Morgan was, an even more different kind of story because it was a proposal and that worked out. So yeah, like I think you gotta go slow to go fast. And I think in publishing a lot of times, it can be a lot of nothing, a lot of waiting, and then like everything happens at once. So yeah.
And how was the editorial call?
It was good. It was long ago, so I'm trying to think of like what it was like. It's funny. So when I wrote The Dividing Sky, I knew that it was kind of like strangely halfway between like a true dystopian adventure and a romance. And I was like, depending on who wants to acquire this, I'm gonna have to change things around. And so Joy Revolution is a romance imprint. And so most of their notes were, we have some big notes about like the ending and kind of how big it is and how we can bring the scale down and make it focus on the relationship. And I was like, that makes a ton of sense. And so I knew going in that it was going to be a lot of work to make that work. And I think, there was a little bit of I think a healthy tension, a good tension between me and Bria and the Yoons on like the romances of it without taking the teeth out of the dystopia, right? Because you want it to feel gritty, you want it to feel real and have something to say, but also swoony and banter and like all the fun parts of having a romance. And so combining those two things, I think, we both had a lot of good push and pull. And I love where we ended up. The book as it is now is like the book of my dreams. I love it so much. And yeah, it wouldn't have happened if we hadn't had like a really healthy, like ongoing dialogue about, exactly how to get there. So.
Love that. So did you have an initial call with the agent after submission? Or
after submission, no. So we just kind of we had gone back and forth on edits and like on just revisions and stuff, and then it was out. Yeah. So then she called me. Yeah. So I think it was funny. She was on vacation, and I saw a tweet from Jen that was like, all I have to do to get a bunch of offers is go on vacation, I guess. And I was like, oh man, I wish she was talking about me. And then like 2 hours later, she calls me and she was like, we have an offer. That was really exciting. Like the call, from the agent to say that someone wants your work is always like a really magical moment. So, yeah.
So walk me through how the debut process went for you. You're further along than myself. And some of the other debuts I've interviewed, some of the people are like, just at the beginning.
Yeah.
So walk me through like what it looks like.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. So let's see. I mean, like it depends on, everyone's different. For me, we signed in like November of 2022, and then I got my first edit letter in January and spent a few months on that. And then, yeah, I was like most of 2023 was just mostly on revisions and stuff. And then by like the fall, we were locked for story. Like we were like, this is the story, like it's baked. Because they had to go to launch, right? So they do their internal launch where the editor basically gets in front of the different every publisher is different, but in Random House, the editor gets in front of the teams, marketing, publicity, sales, for sub-rights, right? And kind of does the like, here's the book and here's the cover and here's how we're pitching it, and they kind of talk about like putting the team together to like do the marketing, all those things, pick an on-sale date. And so once that began to happen, it kind of felt like things were like my book had been like acknowledged into like the broader like machine of publishing Random House, as opposed to just like a secret that my editor and I were keeping. And then like even then, like you get the sense like things are happening behind there's like more bustle and hustle, and like you're hearing from people in different departments, like random emails here and there, but it's not like, oh my gosh, this is happening. I think, and it happens step by step at that point where like you're like, okay, this is real. It's like now it's very real. We had the cover reveal in February. That was like a big thing where it was like, okay, like you can buy it now, like it's on sale places. And as like the broader like a bookish community kind of like becomes more aware of the book, and the cover is gorgeous. Like you can see it there.
Love it.
But the cover, I think, like that was a big thing. Was like, oh damn, like we're doing this, like we're releasing a book. And I was lucky enough to have a lot of like other debut friends. We would be Sarah doesn't mean like we read other stories a lot, and so a lot of them were like, this book is amazing, and I was like, wow, now everyone else thinks so too. And the coolest thing to me has been having it up on like NetGalley. So like to me. I think, going into this, obviously you think, well, my pub date is October 8th. October 8th is like when the book's out in the world. I think what I wasn't expecting was how important the acknowledgement of like the bookish community was going to be to me, such that my book going up on NetGalley felt much more like the book being out in the world than like the actual on sale date. And so when the book went up on NetGalley, that was what, like a month and a half ago. That was like, whoa, like it's really out there. Like people that I like identify as like I'm a bookish person. Right? The bookish people can like, and like there's a lot of like love for books and storytelling in the story, like in the book. And so it's like, wow, if they don't like this, like no one's gonna like this. And so that felt really real to me of just like now it can be like totally and truly perceived. And I do feel like, October 8th is going to be huge, and so when you can pay money for the book, like, that's always great. So I can keep doing this. But in some ways, I feel like it's out there now, and it can be like enjoyed and shared, and like reach people that it needs to reach, and like find its people in some way. That feels like the tangible, like the real like release to me.
Love that. Do you have any plans around launch? Like you doing
things are coming together. I mean, we're lucky to have a really amazing like YA book community here in Atlanta. Lucky to have people here in bookstores here that really support the community. And so I have a friend who works at Brave and Kind in Decatur, and so we're probably going to do like some sort of event with them. It's interesting. Like I think debuts, like, and I will say this, and I mean, and like it's easier said than believed, I guess. But like I think debuts. As a business major, like I can see how in the broader scheme of like publishing being a business, the debut author is like a hard sell, right? Like you don't know if the book's gonna hit, you don't know anything about this person, like they're not a tried and like true, like a known quantity. And so, yes, I know that, like with the intellectual part of my brain. And also, like I wrote this book that is like my whole heart, and I want like the biggest splash for it. And like, I think debuts put a lot of pressure on that like debut month of like, oh, I'm going to travel here and I'm going to do this event and I'm going to go talk on panels. And it's like, well, like maybe not, if anybody wants me, that'd be great. But I'm trying more and more as things get closer to temper expectations and to say like, it's just the first book in hopefully a long career. And, it's a great like introduction to like myself and, what I believe and what I like to say with my stories. But I'm not, I'm no longer hoping to be like flown out to like to do different conferences and stuff in that first month. But I'm going to do something here with my community, people that I care about that have supported me. And, I'll probably go to Y'all Fest and Charles. I love Y'all Fest. This is so fun in Charleston. I just go every year for fun just to like see friends. But other than that, like I'll probably just like chill out and like not do too much. I do love like what I am looking forward to and what I've always loved is like connecting with people that love the book. So I want to do like bookstore events or like virtual book clubs and that kind of thing. Because I just love talking to people about the book and the ideas. And like, I like that about like, I love that about books that I love. Right. So I want to do a lot of that, not to like generate sales, but just to like connect with people. And so I'm looking forward to that, when the book's like officially out, there'll be more of that, I hope. But other than that, like it's not going to be a big, like, I think too, it's funny, like even 5 or 4.5 months out now, there's still a lot like in play. Like I think like publishing still is very much thinking about like summer releases right now. And so a lot could change, I think a lot is still coming together for the fall and different panels are putting together, different conferences are putting together panels. So like, who knows where I'll be, like where I'll be asked to go. But for now, I'm planning on, trying really hard to and maybe do a big push on, the levers I can move this summer. But then once September comes, like, it's like studying for the SATs. Like the night before, it's like you either got it or you don't. So I'm gonna try to like just relax as like October comes closer, and try to just see what happens. But yeah.
Have you been to the AAMBC Awards in Atlanta?
No, I haven't. But I am going to the Black Writers Weekend in August.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, the awards is like the Sunday.
Okay.
Of that event, and it's kind of like the finale of that weekend.
Okay.
And they, like, last year they gave who was it last year they honored?
Was it
Kwame Alexander last year?
Yeah, that's right. I just saw the pictures. Yeah, that's awesome. That's right. Are
You
you
should
gonna come
check
up?
it out. I usually go when I'm in Georgia. I
Okay,
usually go
yeah.
every year. I know
Awesome.
Tamika, the founder of the awards.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, maybe we can meet up.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Okay. Of that. How about social media? Do you have any social media plans?
So I have found, and I do think it's true. So I think, people put a lot of pressure on themselves to do TikTok. I think TikTok's really funny. Like I love like making memes and stuff. Like I really just enjoy it. Just making an idiot of myself on social media. And so when I have the energy and I'm not on deadline, I like to do it. And I did, thought about my deadlines for, future books coming up and other contracts, try to front load as much of my writing as possible this year so that I would have like July and August, let's say, to ramp up on social media stuff. I'm still planning on doing that. I think, again, it's mostly for fun. I do know that, TikTok, and it's true that like TikTok is very much about like instant gratification. So they're not a big like pre-order crowd. They like to buy things that are already out, which is fine. Like I'm just gonna have fun with it. And maybe raise awareness for the book. I think too, with my marketing hat on, I can say that I feel like TikTok, unlike any other social media platform that I've seen, is the best for like what you would think of like this like top of the funnel, right? So like reaching people that have like no idea who you are, right? It can be hard to find those people. I think, Instagram and especially Twitter are like such echo chambers that can be hard to find people that have like that might be like totally oblivious to like your book or even just, your genre in general. TikTok's really good at that. And so I do think that, while it is exhausting and you can burn yourself out, trying to like optimize for stuff, I don't plan on doing that much. But it is unique in that sense that like you're trying to find people that have no idea who you are and introduce yourself for the first time. Like it's a pretty good medium for that.
Love that. Love that. What do you think was your biggest learning experience throughout this debut year?
I'm still having them. So to date, I don't know. To date, I probably would say, I think like, I knew this with my head, I think going in, but I think I like feel it more with my heart now, which is like how important it is like to your like mental sanity and just like being able to persevere in this, to just be a realist. I think like it is great to hope, and like we're all here writing books because we're a little bit delusional. And that's great. Like we need that to create more stories. But like the odds are like 99-1 that you're not going to be a breakout, right? Like it's just like it doesn't happen that way. And the reason we love those stories is because they are so rare. And it's amazing, I think, to think of like, but what if it's me? And that's great. The closer things get, I think the more important it is to think of like the most likely good scenario, right? Like most likely good scenario is like you will connect with readers and maybe booksellers that love what you do and excited for your next thing. You will build a readership. You will, brick by brick, build this like really stable, enthusiastic readership and fan base. Like that sounds great. And I am like trying more and more to ground myself in that, right? That I want this book to find its people, not that I want to be like chosen for some crazy book club or whatever. Because like that doesn't like I can't control that, and I can't control like most of it, but like the odds are that that's not going to happen. Like for a debut, just like the odds are just slim to none. So I'd rather spend my time thinking about like reaching those people and like writing the next book for those people than like waiting for some random like dream come true 1 in a million email to hit my inbox, because the drive yourself crazy.
Very true. Very true. That's a good outlook to have. Okay, let's move on to a few craft tips for writers who'd love to be in your shoes. How do you master voice and making each character's voice distinct?
Master voice. Yeah, I don't know if I've mastered voice. I love, it's funny, I'm a big audiobook listener. And sometimes when I'm getting into a new age category, I'm switching between projects, right? So I'm going from YA dystopia to middle grade contemporary, where she's like a Black girl in suburban Atlanta, very different book. I will listen to like a few chapters of an audiobook, like in that space, to be like, okay, like this is what it literally sounds like, to like have the character. And I usually write first person, so it's easy for me to be like, et cetera, like put myself in the character's actual shoes and headspace. And so that's a really helpful tip for me to just like quickly get back in the zone. And yeah, when I'm writing, I think I do, feel like somebody's talking to me, right? I do feel like I'm having a conversation with this person about what's going on. And the jokes and the like references to like things that happened earlier in the book, it feels like, it was someone's lived experience. And so it kind of helps me to feel grounded in this like sense of reality, right? I think, your voice and your world building really go hand in hand, right? The jokes, the asides, the things your character notices, that they all have to be part of your world. And so they kind of inform each other. For The Mighting Sky, that book is dual POV. And so you have two different voices that are kind of going back and forth, and they're kind of from different kind of experiences in this world. And so, changing what they notice, changing what's important to them, changing, how they think that their friends or coworkers would react if they knew what was going on in their heads, right? All those things had to be different and distinct. And it's always fun when you have dual POV in a romance, because they're never on the same page until the very end. And so you can play a lot with that, like what one person knows and feels and what the other person knows and feels, and creates a really fun tension that way too. So yeah, I think, for me, it's just keeping it conversational, keeping it like relevant to like that real person, right? And really trying to like put myself in their shoes and think about, a real person in front of me telling me what is happening to them in the moment.
Love that. How do you hook a reader in the early pages of the book?
Yeah, I think I've gotten better at this. I think, I never had the issue of like, she woke up one day and the sky outside was gray. And I just like, I always, I think, what is the most important thing I want you to know about my character? Maybe the three most important things, right? Whether it's the world or like what they feel like as like emotionally, or how I want you to sympathize with them, or what's going on in their, like, for the plot, right? Whatever those three things are for like that opening chapter, my goal is to prove it to you. So if I say that, like, I want you to know that my character is compassionate, or like, Hunger Games, right? So like they want you to, like, Suzanne Collins wants you to know that like Katniss cares about her sister. She doesn't say like, my name's Katniss and I care a lot about my sister. She shows you, right? The first thing she does when Katniss wakes up, and she reaches for Prim, right? She thinks about Prim all the time. She tells you that like she hates animals and hates cats, but she kept the cat alive for Prim, right? Those things are hooking the reader, because they give you like an actual character to root for. Like, you care, like you're like, oh, this character is really hard, but she like cares about her sister. That's interesting to me. But it also doesn't just like lay everything out for you. It has to, it kind of pulls you in. You feel like you're getting to know Katniss or my character Liv, by what I'm showing you, just like you would a real person, as opposed to just like, this is how I feel about this thing, right? Because that's not interesting. Like if somebody met you at like a dinner party and they were just like, here's what I think about, about, I don't know, gardening. You're like, okay, well, that's kind of interesting. But they were like, oh, I was out in the garden the other day and I noticed the way the sun was hitting the flowers, et cetera, et cetera. You're like, oh, that's interesting. This person really like cares and notices things and has attention to detail. That's much more intriguing than just like on the nose, like telling you bit by bit, about their life. So yeah, I think like it's the same as any relationship, really. These kind of show facets that suggest a hidden depth, and kind of pull the reader into the story.
And how about the middle? How do you avoid the saggy middle? How do you keep them interested?
Oh man, if anybody has tips out there, I'm all, like my DMs are open. The middle. I think for me, like I am a plotter, and so I do think in terms of like outlines and that kind of stuff. And like for me, each act is characterized by like a change in goal of some kind, and so the key is just to make sure that second act goal is like really juicy and worth striving for, right? I've heard of like try fail cycles, right? So if they have that goal, showing them like trying to like achieve it in like 2 or 3 different ways, and then like ultimately getting there. I think all those things would be really helpful. I think like in some ways, I mean, like honestly, like in some ways you do have a little bit of room to be a little bit soggy in the middle, because by then your character or your reader's invested in your characters, and you can play around a little bit with like more banter or more like quiet relationship building moments or whatever, because those parts are good too. It doesn't all have to be like go 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 as far as the plot is concerned. But it needs to be. I think when I read a book and I feel like the middle's dragging, so that I feel like the characters have forgotten what they're doing, like why we're doing this, right? And so I think the key to that is just having a really compelling goal that the characters are really striving for, even in the midst of whatever else you want to put in there to kind of to beef up the story.
And your story also has a strong romantic subplot. Can you give any tips or tricks to help people get a good romance?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the romance is the plot. Everything else is a subplot for my book. So I think, I think, it's always good to have some sort of like tense dynamic. I think, I feel like, I'm cheating a little bit because I'm doing it in like a speculative sense where you can make up like, the stakes of the world are such that like they could never be together because they're like, they're like enemies, right? Like in real situations, you rarely have that like level of like tension and dynamic. So like, I feel like contemporary rom-com authors are really the masters at creating tension where it's like, oh, is that really that big of a deal? But you're like, yes, this is a huge deal. They cannot possibly be together. In my book, it's easy to be like they're enemies because, there's some evil overlord or whatever. But yeah, I think, I love dual POV romance in particular because you can get inside of the characters' heads and play with that, who's falling first, who has all the information, who maybe doesn't want the other person to know how they're feeling, put your characters through the ringer and just like have it be just like this, like these ultimate moments of like push and pull, like almost on the same page, but not quite. I love playing with that like dramatic irony of the reader knowing, that like one person's keeping a secret from the other person being like, I would trust him like over a cliff. It's like you shouldn't do that because he's lying to you. Those are always really fun moments. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, like it's like any sort of relationship dynamic, you got to prove it. I'm not a fan of like insta love as a trope. Like, don't come for me. I don't love insta love because I like to see the chemistry. I like to see I like to see it build. I like to see people realize that they're right for each other. I like to see, and it's like I want to see it played out. I think I saw on Threads there was like a thread months ago, from a romance author. I wish I could remember who it was, but she was saying, she's also like a qualified like academic like in her like other life, and she was like, and I write romance, right? I'm not, I do both, and when I'm writing a romance, I am like laying the groundwork to state a case that like 2 people belong together, right? And so like over the course of the book, what you're doing is you're laying the groundwork. You're saying like this person, the way they fit together, the way they interact, the way that they solve problems together or don't, makes them the right fit for each other. And you have to kind of lay out your argument to your reader to be like, these people belong together. And at the end of the day, you either believe it or you don't. And I feel like that's, what makes a good romance is like, I think one of my favorite books from last year, was it last year? Yeah, it was last year. Kate Goldbeck's You Again, which is kind of like When Harry Met Sally retelling. It's a great movie, great book. And the characters in there like are, quote unquote, like textbook, like unlikable characters, but they are so right for each other. You're like, you idiots deserve each other. Like, I hate you both, but like, I cannot deny that like you work together. And I think that that's like such a good romance because it's like, not like inserting myself, like I, don't like this, like, but like, the romance works so well because they are like interlocking parts of like a lock. They're selfish and they're, all like they're blunt and all these things. Like they don't like they're not like classic protagonists, but the romance works because they fit together well. And that is what I think makes a good romance. Not that you like want to like date the boy or whatever it is, like book boyfriend, etc. But that like you can see why those 2 people make sense for each other.
Love that. And how about the conclusion? What tips do you have for a satisfying conclusion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. Like we say, the good stories resonate, right? That's a word we hear a lot. Like it resonates with me. And like what like that language and that metaphor I think is common for a reason. I think that when a story is done right, especially at the ending is the hardest part, because it has to echo all those things that came throughout the story before. And so, I think that if you set up the rest of the story right, the ending should be inevitable. If you haven't laid your groundwork, then the ending can feel kind of rushed or like not well thought out, right? But it should be like, oh, like it's like a chord resolving, right? It feels like, oh yes, like of course this is like the end of this work. Like it just like pulls everything together and like fits it thematically. I think the key is to know what you're trying to say from the beginning and like interweave those parts throughout. And the when done right, I think the right story, the right ending will kind of just ring like a bell, the way that like things resonate, right? And hopefully it strikes a chord in the reader as well.
Love that, love that. What would you like to tell us that I haven't already asked you?
Oh man, I don't know. Yeah, I think so. It's trite, but I think it's true, which is like, people tend to assume that like making or like supporting the authors is like, like, oh, like, I like that book. I'm gonna like this on Instagram or whatever. It is really hard, I think, for a debut to last out here, for like any like enduring stretch of time, especially a marginalized debut. And so I would just say, like, if you think about the books that you've loved and read over the past few years, or even like this past year, debuts especially, like if you could do us a solid and shout extra loud, it makes a huge difference because like we're fighting upstream like for all of this, right? Like it's like the machine is such, I think more and more publishing doesn't want to take risks on new quantities. They want to back the like tested like the like kind of like tried and true like veteran authors. And like I get it, again, like they're making money. But don't just assume that because you like heart a story on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, that author's going to be here tomorrow. You really have to show up for us, and we're trying. But it's really hard. Like it's surprisingly hard behind the scenes to be able to make a case for yourself and your books. Like we're out here writing stories, and you see us posting all the glamorous moments, but it is surprisingly hard to fight against the publishing status quo, to establish a space for ourselves and our stories. So help us out and really shout loud.
I love that. How long did it take you to get your check? I've heard everywhere from 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, let's see. So we did like the deal memo in November. I think it did take a while. It was about 9 months. Yeah. Well, for Disney, for Penguin Random House, it was about 7 months, 8 months. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. By then,
so my for me to get my check too.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I just
so
like.
Funny. There's no other job do you work 7 months and then get paid.
Yeah, and I know authors that won't write a word until they get paid, and I get that because it's like, what am I supposed to do? And it doesn't make it go any faster, unfortunately. But we'd all do it. But yeah, like it is wild to be like, we're doing all this for free. Yeah, I know people that have like announced books with no contract signed. It's I don't know, it's crazy. Yeah, Disney won't pay anything or they won't announce anything until the contract's signed either. So like we signed that deal February 2023. Yeah. And we just announced it like in March. So it's been like 13 months.
And what's your what's your Disney project IP?
No, that was my short story. Yeah. So that was just based on, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how have you been building your writer community in Atlanta or online?
Yeah, I go to a lot of events, which has been great. Like there's like the local bookstores who do a bunch of different, launch events and things like that. We just did the Decatur Children's Book Festival here a couple weeks ago, and my book is not out yet, so I was like, I'm not going to be on a panel, but I emailed the bookseller who was organizing it, and I was like, I can moderate. I'm good at moderating. I can ask questions, and she was like, oh, thank God. So she put me on for a few different events, which was great. So I just like make myself useful. I love story. I can't believe this is my job. And so I'll always look for opportunity to talk story with people.
Are there any tools that you found useful or that helped you in the writing process or in your marketing materials or anything?
Canva, basically, nothing super fancy. And then I use Scrivener for writing. I like Scrivener a lot.
I have never used Scrivener.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think my nanny's gonna leave in a second. I gotta hop off. But it's nice that you can rearrange things and kind of do it by scene. So if I want to rearrange something, it's just like drag and drop as opposed to like having the start of the scene, the end of the scene, like moving it around. So I like it.
Have you ever tried autocorrect?
No, I've heard of it though.
I like it when I have a scene I can't figure out. I paste it in there and it'll like give you a critique.
Oh, interesting. Huh. Okay. That's cool. I'll look that up. That's super interesting.
Where can people reach out to you?
So I'm on I'm on Twitter and Instagram at J2Writes, so JTEW Writes. And then I'm on TikTok at Jill2, all one word. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. I'm excited for you. And this comes out in October. Do you have a date yet?
October 8th.
October 8th?
Yep.
Okay.
That'd be great. Thank you so much, JD. I really appreciate it. And yeah, as you're getting closer, do you have a season yet? Do you know when your book's coming out, like, roughly?
That wraps up today's Craft Chat Chronicles with JD Mayo. Thanks for joining us. If you liked the episode, please comment, subscribe, and share. For show notes, writing workshops, and tips, head to jdmayo.com. That's jdmayo.com. While you're there, join JD's mailing list for updates, giveaways, and more.
All right, I appreciate your time. You have a blessed one.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. This is great. Good to meet you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.